It's funny how some people look at you and only see what they want to see, not what's really there. For years, I was just the neighborhood handyman. I was the guy you called when your faucet leaked, your fence post was loose, or your screen door needed fixing. My brother-in-law, Julian, he saw me as an easy target. He saw me as someone he could push around. My name is John, and this is the story of how I quietly got even with someone who thought I was just an old fool, too scared to take risks. My days were pretty simple back then. I'd wake up before the sun, make a strong cup of coffee, and check my tools. My beat-up old truck, a Ford F-150 from the late 90s, was my office. It smelled of sawdust, oil, and a little bit of old coffee. I liked it that way. It was honest. I had a decent living, enough to keep the house going, and enough to put a little bit away for my daughter's college fund. That fund was important to me. It was everything. Julian, my wife's brother, was a different kind of guy. He ran a mid-sized construction company. Or at least, he tried to. He always had a new car, a flashy watch, and a loud laugh. He was the kind of guy who talked big, always about his next grand project or the big money he was about to make. He'd come over for family dinners and always have something to say about my work. "Still fixing leaky toilets, John?" he'd ask, a smirk playing on his lips as he'd take a generous slice of pie. My wife, Susan, would shoot him a look, but I'd just shrug. "Someone's got to," I'd say, "and it pays the bills." He'd shake his head. "Bills, sure. But real money, John? That's made in deals. In vision. Not with a wrench." I never paid much attention to him. He was just Julian. Always had to be the smartest guy in the room. These little jabs were common. He'd ask me to patch up a wall for him on one of his sites, then pay me half what he'd pay someone else, saying, "It's family, John. You're practically retired, what do you need all that cash for?" I'd grit my teeth, take the money, and finish the job. For Susan, I told myself. To keep the peace. My real ambition was always something more. I loved tinkering. I loved looking at a problem and finding a better way. In my garage, late at night, under the single bare bulb, that was my sanctuary. I had a workbench covered in sketches, prototypes, and discarded ideas. Nuts and bolts, pieces of metal, old tools I'd adapted. It was messy, but it was my messy. The idea for my tool had been brewing for years. I'd seen it on countless construction sites, including Julian's. Workers struggling with repetitive, time-consuming tasks. Bracing, aligning, fastening. It was inefficient. It wasted material, it wasted labor. I saw a particular process that was clumsy, often requiring 2 people, sometimes even 3, for a job that should have been straightforward. I started sketching. A simple device, really. A clamp, a pivot, a locking mechanism. It needed to be adjustable, strong, and easy to use with one hand. It would hold pieces in place, allowing one person to do the work of 2, faster and more accurately. It would reduce material waste and increase safety. I spent months, then years, refining it. Building prototypes out of aluminum scraps, old plumbing parts, anything I could find. I'd try it, it would fail, I'd redesign it, try again. My hands were always stained with grease, my fingernails perpetually dirty. One evening, about 3 years before all this went down, Julian showed up at our door, not for dinner, but with an air of frantic importance. He had a stack of glossy brochures and a slick smile. "John, Susan, get a load of this," he boomed, spreading the papers across our kitchen table. Julian rarely visited in person without an ulterior motive. "What's all this, Julian?" Susan asked, stirring her tea. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, though it was still loud enough to carry through the whole house. "This, my dear sister, is the future. And John, this is how you finally make some real money." He started talking about an investment opportunity. Something about a new kind of prefabricated housing. He said it was going to revolutionize the industry. He'd found a ground floor opportunity. They're building these units overseas, see? Cheap labor. Then shipping them here. The demand is through the roof. We just need to buy into the distribution rights for our region. He explained, waving his hand vaguely. My gut told me it was fishy. I'd seen these schemes before. They come and go. But Julian was persistent. Think about your daughter, John, he said, looking at me directly. College isn't getting any cheaper. You always say you want to give her the best. This is it. A chance to really set her up. He knew my soft spot. My daughter, Emily, was applying to schools. The tuition estimates made my head spin. I wanted her to have options. How much are we talking about? I asked, my voice flat. He named a sum that made me wince. It was a significant chunk of Emily's college fund. Not all of it, but enough to make me feel sick. I don't know, Julian. I started. That's a lot of money. It's for Emily's education. Julian laughed, a dismissive sound. Education? She'll have a better education when her old man is finally smart enough to make some real money. This isn't a gamble, John. This is a sure thing. My contacts, they're plugged in. This is guaranteed. He kept at it for weeks. Calling, stopping by, even talking to Susan, trying to get her to convince me. He told me I was too scared to take risks. He said I was an old-timer who only understood wrenches, not real business. He made me feel small, feel inadequate as a father who couldn't just hand his daughter a blank check for college. The pressure mounted. Susan, wanting to believe her brother, started to waver. She thought maybe he had a point. She saw the stress I was under, the long hours I worked. She wanted a better life for Emily too. One rainy Saturday morning I cracked. Emily was out with friends. Julian was on the phone again, his voice echoing in the quiet house. Trust me, old-timer, this is how real money is made. You're just too scared to take risks. I walked into the kitchen, picked up the phone from Susan. All right, Julian, I said, my voice tired. How do we do this? A week later, I wrote him a check. I watched him take it, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. He patted my shoulder, a gesture that felt more like a conqueror's touch than a brother-in-law's. You won't regret this, John, he said. This is the smartest thing you've ever done. He had no idea. The sure thing evaporated within 6 months. The company went belly up. Julian called me, not to apologize, but to blame the market, the government, anything but himself. Bad luck, John, he said, as if it was a small inconvenience, not a significant sum of my daughter's future. These things happen. You've got to be able to stomach it in this game. Maybe it was too big a risk for you after all. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. The money was gone. Emily's fund was hit hard. And a few local recommendations. He was a quiet man, efficient, and didn't seem to care that I showed up in work boots and a faded t-shirt. So, Mr. Peterson, he said, looking at my crude drawings and my physical prototype. It was a dark, cramped office, filled with stacks of legal books. Tell me about your invention. I explained it, simply, clearly. How it would make one worker do the job of two, how it would save time and materials on a construction site. How it could be adapted for different tasks. He listened without interruption, occasionally making a note. When I finished, he picked up the tool, turned it over in his hands. This is elegant in its simplicity, he said, a faint smile touching his lips. You know, I've seen a lot of complex ideas that solve nothing. This, however, solves a very real, very common problem. The patent process was long and expensive. More money from my dwindling savings. But this time, it felt like an investment in myself, not in Julian's pipe dreams. Mr. Harrison guided me through every step. The provisional patent, the full application, the drawings, the claims. It took almost 2 years, but finally, the letter arrived. My patent was approved. Patent number 10XXX. It was real. With the patent secured, Mr. Harrison helped me draft licensing agreements. This was the next big hurdle. I needed to convince manufacturers to pay me royalties to use my design. I started small, approaching local companies that made specialized construction equipment. My pitch was simple, a live demonstration. I'd show up at their fabrication shops, sometimes using their own materials, and prove how my tool cut labor, time, and waste. I'd set up a task, time myself with and without the tool. The results spoke for themselves. One of the first companies to sign was a mid-sized firm out of Ohio. They saw the potential immediately. They licensed it for a specific type of framing application. Then another company in Texas wanted to adapt it for roofing. Trusses. Slowly, steadily, the royalties started coming in. Not a flood at first, but a steady trickle. Each check, a small victory. While I was quietly building my future, Julian's business started to falter. I'd hear bits and pieces from Susan, or sometimes I'd see him at family gatherings, looking more harried, his flashy watch seeming a little less bright. "Business is tough, John," he'd grumble over Thanksgiving dinner, picking at his turkey. "These new methods, they're killing me. Everyone's going for these modular builds, these assembly line approaches. Can't compete with the speed. My boys are good, but they can't work miracles." He'd shake his head, completely oblivious to the fact that the new methods he was complaining about were often powered by versions of my patented tool, now being manufactured and sold by companies nationwide. The name of the tool wasn't publicly tied to me, just the brands that licensed it. His construction business, Julian Builders, slowly started to crumble. Projects were taking longer, costing more, and he was losing bids. The industry was shifting, embracing efficiency, and Julian, stuck in his old ways, was being left behind. His arrogance had blinded him. He never looked at the small details, the little inefficiencies that my tool had been designed to fix. He only looked at the big picture, the sure things. I saw his flashy car, a new BMW not long ago, now parked more often than not, gathering dust. He started complaining about cash flow, about needing to lay off workers. Susan worried about him, always calling to see if I'd heard anything. I'd just listen, offer a non-committal hum. My royalties, meanwhile, were growing. What started as a trickle became a steady stream, then a significant river. Emily's college fund was not only replenished but overflowing. I even bought a new, reliable truck. Nothing fancy, but it started every time. Then came the call from Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Peterson," he said, his voice calm, "I believe. We have a situation that requires your presence. It involves a party who is attempting to circumvent your patent. They are trying to license a very similar, essentially identical, design from a third party. They claim it's their own innovation, but my preliminary review shows it infringes upon your patent." "Who is it?" I asked, a feeling of dread and anticipation mixing in my gut. "It's Julian Builders," he said. "Your brother-in-law's company." A long silence stretched between us. I took a deep breath. "I'll be there, Mr. Harrison." Set up the meeting. The meeting was set for a Tuesday morning in Mr. Harrison's office. The same office where I had first shown him my crude prototype. I arrived a few minutes early. Mr. Harrison greeted me, his face impassive. "They're in the conference room," he said, gesturing down the hall. "Julian and his lawyer, Mr. Davies." I walked down the hallway. I could hear Julian's loud voice even before I got to the door. "This is ridiculous, Davies. We need this technology. My company is bleeding money because everyone else is using these methods. This other company, They promised me a cheap license for their version. I pushed the door open. Julian was seated at the large conference table, looking disheveled, his expensive suit rumpled. Opposite him was a younger lawyer, looking stressed. Julian looked up, his eyes narrowing when he saw me. "What in the blazes are you doing here, John?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did someone's toilet back up in the lobby? Or did Harrison here finally decide to hire a janitor?" His lawyer, Mr. Davies, gave a small, apologetic nod in my direction. He clearly knew. I ignored Julian. I walked to the head of the table where Mr. Harrison had taken his seat. He had a stack of papers in front of him. "Mr. Julian," Mr. Harrison began, his voice calm and professional. "My client, Mr. John Peterson, is the sole owner of patent 10XXX, covering the universal framing and fastening jig. This patent protects the design, function, and application of a device that has become foundational to modern construction efficiencies." Julian snorted. "What are you talking about, Harrison? John doesn't own any patents. He fixes light switches." He looked at me, a flicker of genuine confusion in his eyes, quickly replaced by his usual condescension. "You're out of your depth, John. This is real business. Go home. You're embarrassing yourself." Mr. Harrison pushed a thick binder across the table. "Mr. Davies, I believe you've had a chance to review these documents. These are the patent filings, the licensing agreements, and the ownership papers." Mr. Davies nodded, his face pale. He pushed the binder towards Julian. "Julian, I tried to tell you earlier. This is legitimate." Julian grumbled, flipping open the binder. His eyes scanned the pages. He saw the patent number, the detailed drawings, and finally my name. John Peterson. Inventor. Assignee. Owner. His face slowly drained of color. His jaw dropped. He looked at me, then at the papers, then back at me. The smirk was gone. The bluster was gone. All that was left was a raw, naked disbelief. No, this can't be," he stammered. This is the tool everyone's using. This is what's been changing the industry. This is yours?" Mr. Harrison leaned forward, his voice firm. "I think you're out of your depth, Mr. Julian. This specific technology, which your company now seeks to license from a third party, is a clear infringement on Mr. Peterson's intellectual property." He then pointed at the ownership papers. "As you can see, the ownership papers clearly state who the legal owner is. Mr. Peterson." I looked at Julian. His eyes were wide now, not with anger, but with a dawning despair. The realization hitting him like a physical blow. The very thing he had dismissed me for, the not making real money, the old-timer too scared to take risks, was now the cornerstone of my quiet success and the reason for his spectacular failure. The very innovation that was driving his company out of business was mine. "All those years," he whispered, almost to himself, "all those complaints about inefficiency, it was you." I didn't gloat. I didn't feel a rush of angry satisfaction. Just a quiet, calm sense of vindication. "Some risks are worth taking, Julian," I said, my voice even. "The calculated ones born of hard work and understanding real problems. Not just trusting a sure thing from someone who talks big." Julian had nothing to say. He just sat there, defeated. His construction business, already on its last legs, would not survive this. Without access to that technology, or facing a massive lawsuit for infringement, it was over. I stood up. "Mr. Harrison, if you'll excuse me. I have another appointment." As I walked out, I didn't look back. The air in the hallway felt lighter. Julian's company went under within weeks. His flashy car was repossessed. He lost his big house. He eventually found work doing site management for another construction firm, a much smaller, less glamorous role. I rarely saw him, and when I did, he was subdued, his arrogance replaced by a quiet bitterness. My life, meanwhile, opened up. Emily went to her dream college, fully funded. Susan and I traveled a bit. I still tinker in my garage, but now it's for enjoyment, not desperation. My royalties continue to come in, a steady reminder of what quiet determination and a little inventiveness can achieve. It's easy to look at someone, especially someone doing honest, hands-on work, and underestimate them. To see them as simple, or even foolish. But sometimes the people who work with their hands, who see the fundamental problems up close, are the ones who can find the most elegant solutions. And sometimes, the biggest risks aren't the ones you take with your money, but the risks you take on yourself, pouring your time and passion into an idea, even when no one else believes in you. That's how real money is made. That's how real change happens. And that's how dignity is earned, not given. If this story resonated with you, join our channel by liking and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.